So hello everyone, welcome to our fourth video on Node.js, Express and MongoDB tutorial. So in the last few videos we talked about Node.js and how you can use Express and EJS along with Node.js, and also how we connected in the third tutorial the MongoDB to our Node.js. So in this video we'll be making a basic application which will be a kind of a form, and we'll be posting those data. We'll take an input from the user and we'll be posting the data through the MongoDB database, and we'll be also reading those data and display in a list format, and we'll be also providing an option to delete those data. So let's first create a basic form kind of a layout in our home.ejs. We'll not be focusing more on the UI kind of UI part of the things. We'll be mostly focused on how the things work, and we'll be mostly talking about that. So let's open up your browser. I'll just real quick, I'll go for Bootstrap. Bootstrap 5 would be fine for the demo. So let's take CDN. Let's take a starter template. We'll copy this one and let's paste over here. Let's delete those additional chunks that we have over here. Let's delete this. Okay, let's save it. And we'll be also needing jQuery. So let's search for jQuery CDN, and we'll be going over here, and let's take minified one, and let's copy this, and we'll be also including this in our Bootstrap template over here. And let's first run our server to see what we get. So let's go to localhost 3000, and it takes, okay, we have hello world. Okay, that's fine. We'll again go to Bootstrap and we'll be looking for some layouts, and let's take a container. I think let's take this one, and let's change this header one to something called insert your data here, and we'll be having a container inside which will be keeping a form. Let's go to forms and take any of the basic form. Let's create a form where we have an email ID and also we have a text area. So we'll be posting these two data into our database. So let's just copy these and paste it over here. We'll include this thing in a form. Let's create a form tag real quick, and we'll be also ending our form tag over here, and let's give it a ID kind of thing. Let's say we call it data form. Okay, so we have a data form over here, and we'll also create a button to submit these data. Let's create a button class, create a class of Bootstrap button, primary, and let's call it something save data. To save data, just call it save data, and we'll also be giving the ID to our form. Let's say save data, and also we'll be changing these. We'll be also providing names to these input tags. Let's call it email, and let's call the second one as some kind. Okay, let's call it simply text. And also we'll be providing the button type to submit. Okay, I think maybe we need to put this inside this one. Okay, so now we'll be creating, we have our form ready. We'll be creating our script so that we can get the data from form and push it to our Node.js server so that it can be inserted into our database. Let's create a script tag, and we'll be getting the form ID $, and we'll be providing a hash symbol for ID. And what's the name of form? It's data form. Data form dot submit. On submit event, we'll be creating function and we'll be taking an event. And let's first write e.prevent default so that the form doesn't submits on its own. And the next thing we'll be doing is we'll be getting the values from the form. We'll write var values is equal to $ add this dot serialize array would be fine. And let's print this one, what we get. Let's see whether it is working or not. Console.log, and we'll be putting values. And let's save this one and let's refresh our thing, and we'll insert a data over here, and we'll be also inserting some dummy data. Okay, so we have something on console. It says as 0 is the name value, and 1 as another name value, that is email and text. So let's now real quick post this data to our server. So we'll be writing $.post, and we'll be providing a route to push data, you can say that, and we'll be providing comma and write values to, and then we'll be creating a callback that is response. Okay, let's call it response, and we'll be also looking for status. So let's create the function. So let's print something like what we get from the console.log and response. Let's call it response, and we'll be also checking with the status what we get. Let's call the status first, and let's refresh this one, and we'll be putting some data and click on save. So we have right now it says that 404 not found post data, because we need to create a route for this data to be posted. So what we'll do, we'll create a route to our app called post data. So we'll go to our index.js and at app.post, and we'll call this one push data and provide a comma. Same story, response request response, and let's create the function for it. And one thing we have to keep in mind that whenever we are using post and we have to get data from the body, we need to install an additional module called body parser. So you need to go to your terminal, and let's terminate the server first, and we'll write npm I body parser. Let's install this one. So once we have our body parser installed, we'll just call it over here. Let's call it constant body parser is equal to quire body parser, and we need to set our app. I'll come over here and I'll write app.use body parser dot JSON, and we'll also be writing app.use body parser dot URL encoded, and we'll give it an option extended to true. So I think this will do the work for us. So once we have imported our module and set our app to use those things, we'll be just console log, doing the console log of the request what we are getting on to the server on the client. So we'll write console.log request.body. So let's run the server and check what we have when we, okay, I'm sorry. Let's run the server. So we need to refresh this one, and let's push in some data, and let's check for the server console. Okay, we have data as email and the email ID and the text that we sent through. So we are getting data over here. So I'll just declare a variable called data and will assign request.body to it. So we have our data to our data variable over here. So now we'll be creating a function to insert the data into the MongoDB database. So we'll call this function as, we'll create an async function and we'll call as, let's create push data. And we'll be providing two parameters over here. One is the data to be inserted, data in, and another will be callback. We'll call it CB. So let's now call our MongoDB client. So we have this DB object over here. So what we'll do, we'll declare a constant, call it collection equals db.collection, and we'll be calling the collection of users which we created while creating our database. The users collection will be inserting into this one, and the second line will be asking for, we'll declare a variable called resp or response, what we'll be getting the response, and we'll be writing collection dot first we'll assign await collection dot insert one, and we'll be just writing data.in, and we'll save this one, and also we'll be providing the CB to rest. What's the callback for that? So that should be working. Let's call push data over here. So we'll be calling push data, and we'll be providing the data as a first parameter, and what we get from callback, that is CB, and we'll be writing the rest.send, and we'll be writing here CB. So let's see what we are getting over here. So we'll be restarting our server once, and let's run it. Let's push some data in, and let's save data. So we got acknowledged and inserted ID as some ID. So I will come to our database and refresh it. You see we have new data over here. This old data is from that previously running server. When we just restarted the server, it basically posted the data. So that was the old data that we got over here. So for suppose we'll change this one to something other value. So we'll send, and if we refresh this one, we'll be getting a new data over here. So we are able to insert the data in our database. So now what we are going to do is that those data that are in the database will be displaying this data over here in the just below our insert form, right below it. So for that, what we are going to do is we're going to come to home.js and we'll create another container. Alright, we have a container over here. So we'll create a new container so that we can separate both the things, and we'll give some heading to inserted data. We'll call it inserted data. And let's take a list from the bootstrap. So do we have any list utility, something? List group would be fine. Let's take this one so that we can change this one to button later on. So we'll copy this one and let's paste it over here and see what we get. Let's refresh our localhost. So we have got something called inserted data, and these are the dummy data of the template. So let's remove the first two of the second and third one, and keep this one as temporary so that we can later on push data in this format. So I'll come over here, and what I'll do is I'll create a function called get data. And then we'll be calling a get request to our server. Let's call it get data. We'll be providing comma and nothing to be pushed along with, and we'll be writing response comma status, and we'll see console.log response. So right now there's no route for get data, so we'll be creating a get data route in our index.js. So same as the push data, we'll just create a function. Let's remove the first parameter. We don't have anything to be posted over here. So what we'll do right now, we'll just call the same collection over here, and we'll also calling in this one, and let's change this one to collection.find, and we'll be passing the empty option so that there's no query going in. We'll be just pulling all data from the database, and we'll be also putting dot to array. This will do the job, and we'll be giving the callback to response. We have our function, so we'll also create our root over here. So let's copy this one, and let's delete these lines we don't need. Let's call this one over here, and we'll change this one to app.get, and this one to get data. So once we get this one, we'll say response.send, and we first need to call the push data. So I'll just write push data, and then we'll create a callback cb, and then a function, and we'll putting the response.send inside this one, and I'll say cb. Whatever data comes back has to be sent to the client. So let's save this and check what we get. No, before that we need to call this function so that this get request can be executed. So what we'll do is when the page loads in, we will call this one. So for that, what I'll do is I'll write document dot ready. Once the document is ready, function, let's call get data when the document is ready. So what it is supposed to do is when we reload our page, it should print the response of these data from the database to our console over here. So let's refresh it and see what we get. We need to restart our server because we did changes on the server end also. So server is started. Let's reload it. So what we have in the console, we have 3 data from the database on the console, that is 0, 1, 2, 3 over here. So now we need to populate this list with this data. So what I'll do is I'll come over here and I'll say response dot for each. I'll remove this one, and response dot for each element we have to append the ordered list with this one. So I'll just cut this one, and let's give this one a ID to inserted list. We'll call it inserted list, and we'll come over here, we'll give a dollar sign and we'll write inserted list dot append, and we'll be providing the, what do you say, that the HTML code for the data that has to be appended. And let's see if both are same. Yeah. And now we'll be in the heading, we'll be writing the email. So we'll be providing a dollar sign, and inside curly braces we'll be writing element dot email. And let's also print the description that we added, or text that we added, and we'll be pasting it here, and we'll be writing text. And let's change this one to button, and we'll be giving it a class to button. Rounded pill would be fine, and let's call it delete. And we'll change this one to button danger so that it should look red. Let's save this one and reload once what we get. So we have 3 data that we inserted into our database, and we have delete buttons. And let's insert the data once and see what we get. Save. Okay, the data got inserted. Let's refresh it and check. Okay, we got our server terminated. It says CB is not a function on line number 62. And why it said that? Line number 62, CB is not a function. Okay, so what I did wrong was I need to change this to might have changed, I don't remember. Okay, let's save this, and we'll run our server. How it worked before, I don't know. Let's see, inserted data, save data. We got the acknowledgement to true and inserted ID over here, and when we refresh it, we have our data in our inserted data list. So let's do it something like, when we insert the data, it should reload automatically. So what I'll do, I'll just come to my home.ejs, and once we get a response, we'll call get data over here, and we'll clear the list before appending it. So before the for each, we'll be writing inserted list dot clear would be, is it clear? Clear, no, we don't have clear. Dot empty, yeah, we can write empty over here. And let's see what happens right now. So let's refresh it and let's give it some value, save data, and we got a number 5 added over here. And let's change something to save, and we got number 6 added. Similarly, if we change something over here and let's push the data again, we have the list appended, and we'll refresh it, and we have 7 datas in our inserted data. So now once we have done this insertion and the fetching of the data, now we'll be going to the delete part. So when the user clicks on the delete button, it should delete that particular data from the database. So you can see, if we refresh this one, we have all the data over here. We have total 7 data. Here we have 7 inserted data, and we can insert new if you want. So now let's go to the delete part. So for delete, what I'll be doing is I'll be creating a new function called delete data, and we'll be providing the data buttons with, we'll come to the append part of get data, and we'll be adding, let's delete data, let's call like this, and we'll be also providing a data ID. something called this one, data id dot underscore id. So what's unique about all the data that we get is the underscore id field, that is the object id of that data. So we can put that in the data id so that every data can be uniquely identified and the operation can be performed on that particular data. So we'll do something like this, and before that we'll just refresh and check whether the buttons have been inserted in that particular format that we wanted to get. So let's refresh this, and our developer panel will pick up the button and see whether we have unique data ID for every. Okay, so we have unique data IDs for every button, you can see. So now what we'll do is we'll write the function for deleting. For that, we'll be saying that document dot on click will be saying the class name, that is delete dash data. Third one is the function. So let's call this. So if you are wondering that why I wrote this one like document dot on click delete data instead of writing just the data $sign and dot delete data dot click, why I avoided this thing is because we are populating the list dynamically, and and that particular thing doesn't work with the dynamic data. So to work with the dynamic data, we have to do it in this way, document.on event. So it checks with the whole document at that particular time when you are clicking the data or a button. So it checks the whole document, and from that it fetches the button ID or button class that you are adding. And we did not also put the ID delete data in the ID field because IDs could be unique to every element. So it would be much better to do with the class identifier, class selector. So once we have this one, what I'll do, I'll just write variable data ID. We'll be getting the data ID from the button that has been clicked. So we'll write $sign this dot attribute, and we'll be writing data ID. That should work, I think. So let's first print something on console, the data ID, so that we can verify that whether it is working or not. So we'll write in console.log, and okay, we don't need to declare any function. So why would we be declaring a function for that? So let's remove the function and simply call it like this. So let's refresh it and check what we have. So let's come to the console and let's click on delete. Okay, so we have our data ID. We click the second button, we have the data ID. Let's click again the second button, we have 2 times the data ID. Third button we have, let's click the fourth button 4 times. Okay, I clicked by mistake 6 times, so I have 6 times the same data ID. So we are getting unique data IDs for every button clicks, every other button clicks, and the same data ID for the same button clicks. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna post this data ID to a delete route to our server, so that this particular data ID data should be deleted. So what I'll do, I'll write $sign.post. We'll be posting to the route called delete data, and the second parameter would be data ID to the data ID, and we'll be calling in the third parameter for the response and status. Let's create the function for that, and we'll be console.log response. Okay, so we have this thing right now. So we'll be creating the delete route real quick in our index.js. So we'll be just copying this one and let's paste it over here. We'll be creating the first parameter called data ID, because we are also putting in data ID to our query, that what data exactly to be deleted. So we'll write async function delete data, would be fair enough. So next thing we'll be calling in our collection, the user collection that we are executing this query to, and the response variable. So I'll just change this one, remove this one, and write delete one. I'll be just deleting one data at a time, so I'll be writing delete one, and we'll be giving a query by saying where the ID is object ID. If you select object ID and then the data ID, and if you are like, if you don't get auto suggestion for object ID, just write it in this way and go to your Mongo client where we called it, and we'll be also providing comma inside that curly braces and write object ID, because I got auto suggestion and I selected and it got inserted over here automatically, because it's a function from the MongoDB library, the driver we have for our Node.js. So in this way we'll write this, and let's give it the callback to our response, what we have here. And we'll be also creating the route for deleting the data. So let's copy this push data and paste it over here, and we'll be changing this to delete data, and we'll be closing the curly braces and the front bracket. So now we need to call this function of delete data with the data ID. So we have to declare a variable to get the data ID from the request. So we'll write data ID is equal to request dot body dot data ID. This should be working. And next thing we'll be calling delete data, and in the function we'll be passing the data ID and providing a comma, and we'll be getting our callback from the function. And let's create the callback, handling the callback, and we'll be posting the same data to the client. Send response.send, and we have our CV. So now let's check what we get when we click on delete data. So I'll just restart the server because we made changes on the server side. So let's refresh the client and let's click on delete. Okay, so it said acknowledged true and delete count is 1. And let's refresh this one. So we got one of the data removed. We just have 6 data over here. So let's make it in this way, that so when we click delete, it should also delete that in real time over there in our front end. So what we'll just call the get data over here in the delete part. Let's call it in the delete data. So let's refresh it, and when we click on delete, you can see one of the data got removed. If you click on delete, we got one data removed. We click delete, we got one data removed, and we'll be checking. We have 3 data over here, and when we'll go to our MongoDB and refresh it, we have 3 data over here. So those were the basics: create, read, and delete data from the MongoDB database using Node.js. That's all for this video, and we'll be seeing you in the next video. If you have any questions or queries, you can write down below in the comments. And if you want any new topics to be covered, you can also comment down and suggest. We'll be covering that too. And if you like the video, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like the video. Thanks for watching. Hope you have a great time.